Cerniglia. I serve on the board of New Light Theater Project. I'm a theater dramaturg by trade, a PhD in theater history, and so a great love of all of what's mixed in this way today. So we're here. Ivy Schamis, yes, Ivy Schamis, who inspired Michelle and discussed her experience with what happened in Parkland on 2/14/2018, and a play came out of that, and we're here. I'm glad I saw it already on Wednesday. Still had some time to absorb it, and I'm thrilled to see it again today. And my understanding is that Ivy, you hadn't read a play. This was your first experience of it today, obviously. You had a certain life experience, and you've taken up talking about it in other forums. But I just want to start today by asking you what your experience was today, sort of watching something that happened to you, interpreted in art, and sharing back with you.
Thank you for coming. I was curious, very curious. I knew Michelle was writing this, and I didn't know it would come to fruition. I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know who would show up to watch this. I thought, well, it was the worst day of my life, and why would anyone want to experience that? But I'm unbelievably surprised. I didn't know what to expect. I had not seen it before, and so I live in Washington, D.C. now, so I took the train out this morning. I was pretty nervous about what was to come, and the theater was very gracious and told me if I was upset or if I couldn't handle it, that I could leave in the middle. But I knew I was determined to stay and watch this. I also told my brain that this is off-Broadway show, and that it's even though it was very much real life, I just feel unbelievable at how it just really was a true telling of what happened that day and what happened in that classroom. Because I always wanted to honor room 1214. It literally was my happy place, and Annabelle did a great job playing B. I can't get over it. She really did, because it were my words. Much of this were my words and my experience and my feeling of room 1214, and all of those numbers, and I play those numbers all the time. And it's amazing how Michelle weaved that into the show, because those numbers are crazy. There's so many, 17 coincidences at 1214 and 214. I knew when she was putting this together, I just didn't realize how well it all came together, and what an amazing job they did playing myself and the students. So that I was very enamored sitting in there watching for you.
I got an opportunity to see Wa, which is another play told by father of one of the kids who was killed in Parkland that day. He was a visual artist who was also using theater, because and I remember Columbine. I was just telling a friend of mine that I had just started my doctoral program in history. Going back in time to try to understand the present right after Columbine had happened, and just sort of processing them. And then all of this time has passed, and nothing has gotten better. And so we have to do something better. So I got to see Guac, another telling of what happened that day, in the ways in which, and how also Valentine's Day resonates in love, and what's supposed to be this expression of love, and what happened on that day, and the resonances of it, and also how going out and trying in politics, and all the ways in which we're like, can we stop this from happening? But something about art was opening me up in a little bit of different way. And then, we're all in the midst of an aftermath of an election, and then coming back to the theater again. And how can art help us share a little bit, and had a very strong reaction on Wednesday to that. And so I wonder about that, and all in the ways in which we're trying to make our world better through history, through teaching, through education, but also through art. And I'm wondering, I'm still, in the midst of the questions, like, how can we do this better? What are the things that we can identify and take action on, but also understand each other better? We're missing each other all the time. So how do we come together a little bit better? Can you tell us a little bit about, you did this, you're in a classroom, and you're still a teacher, and in the ways in which you are in the world, how do you do that? But what were the ways in which, after this happened, that you did come back and, you know, finish what you could, but then you moved and shifted into a different gear, and like, where do you find yourself now?
Interesting. Well, I just to go back real quick, the art aspect is really interesting. Who would think? I mean, we never thought of any of these things.
Yeah.
Guns were not in my wheelhouse at all. And I think also I've learned a lot in these past 6 years, things I didn't really want to learn, but I'm learning a lot still. And I feel like the biggest common denominator among all of these school shootings, in my opinion, is that we didn't think it would ever happen to us. And all the things that were written in this show were really accurate. We never had an active shooter drill. We never thought about it because it wouldn't happen in Parkland. Parkland was such a lovely community. I mean, I'm sure like Littleton, Colorado, and Aurora, Colorado, and everywhere else, Uvalde, Texas. I saw the show, the one-man show, Manny Oliver, his son Joaquin Oliver was killed, and so he goes around, and that's how he expresses himself. So it's wonderful that he can do that, and it makes him feel better. That's his therapy. I'm here with a friend of mine, Kim Snyder, who makes films about this very topic. In fact, she introduced me to the whole idea of Dunblane. So when they were talking about Scotland, she made the film about Dunblane and Mick North, and I cry when I think about him because his daughter was the same age as my son, and she was in first grade, and her whole class was killed. And I have a picture of her on my phone, and I look at her all the time because my son's married and he has 2 children, and it's just, you know, for the grace of God, I don't know. So and she did a film on Dunblane and on Newtown and us kids with Parkland, and we just came back from the film festival, Death by Numbers, where a student in my class, Samantha Fuentes, who was badly injured, the film is based on journals that she wrote. So in answer to the art is a very good expression, you know, to make yourself at least get out there and also to spread a message. He spreads a very strong message, Manny Oliver. But the other thing, and you didn't ask this, but I'm just gonna say, the other thing that's weird, and my husband thought it was weird for me to talk about it, and so I don't as much, but Michelle brought it out in the play, because he thinks that what I was thinking maybe not have been the right thing, but I really was, I was crouching with a young lady named Kelly after we heard bullets in the hallway. We literally, it was a couple seconds from the time we heard the shooting in the hallway to the bullets coming through the glass panel of the door. And so we stopped, and I see in the show also that Nick had a lot of the last words, and he had a lot to say. It was not Nick in the play, but Nick was the swimmer in my class that was killed. And so Kelly, she was a senior, and she had pink hair and an interesting girl, and she called me over because she was thinking of her mother, and so I crouched with her in the corner, and I literally was, in my head that this shooter was gonna come in. Why wouldn't he come in, or she, or they, or I don't know who it was, why wouldn't they come in? All they had to do was reach in and open the door, and there we were, sitting, crouching in the corners of the classroom, and I'm the adult. I'm the only adult in the classroom. They were juniors and seniors in high school. They seemed like adults. They were very mature, but they were still kids. And I'm the adult in the classroom, and what am I gonna do? And there we're in the history of the Holocaust class, and we talked about how we're gonna combat hate, and we were talking about what to do when you confront hate groups on your college campuses. And I just thought, this person's gonna have so much hate in their heart. I really was, in my mind, gonna stand up and say, we love you. I figured it would be the last words I ever said. But the shooter didn't come in, and so went across the hall to my friend Monique's classroom and shot into there. There were 30 classrooms in the building. He shot into 3 on the first floor, and then continued to roam the halls and shoot the rest of the people. Like Joaquin Oliver were killed because the alarm went off. Kids from the 3rd floor started evacuating the building, thinking it was a fire alarm, and then he came up the stairs and shot everybody else in the hallway. But we were the 3 teachers that had kids in our classroom shot killed in front of us. The other two teachers don't really talk about it, and it's hard. It's not that it's easy, but somebody, I feel like somebody has to tell their story, because if it brings any kind of advocacy, I don't know what good it's doing. I like the way you infused a lot of Florida politics into there. And that's why I don't live there anymore. They changed the gun, you can buy a gun at 18 at the time, and then they changed it to 21 right after the Parkland shooting, and then of course they changed it back, so it doesn't matter, all the things that they tried to do, but, yeah, so, you know, it's very sad in the open carry, all of that. I mean, you try to do what you can. I know sometimes you feel like you're spinning your wheels. You're trying to be an advocate for the, not just for kids, but for just gun violence safety and gun violence prevention or gun whatever. But I don't know. It's a hard uphill battle. It sure is.
There's something that occurred to me, watching this, being inspired by, your story, your passion, and also Michelle's too, and where they overlap and share, but particularly never forget, the irony, of everything, but it's really powerful, right, in terms of understanding human experience. And I've had the privilege, actually, last 4 years now, of getting involved in a couple of theatrical projects about the Holocaust, and investigating different, and there was one I was working on before the Holocaust, actually about Magda Goebbels. And we were going to do an opera sort of about her, and lots of conversations about someone who participated in with the Nazis in extermination. Like how would you tell a story? And I think there have been other plays too. A recent play by Tectonic Theater Project with Blueberries, which is just looking at a photo album of someone who was a Nazi officer, because everyone's humans here, and I think we're trying to understand. So one of the producers of this opera we were maybe going to do, so it's anything with the Holocaust is so hot button. People don't want to talk about. People don't want to think about uncomfortable things, which is taken up in your classroom in this. And I've gotten involved, not that one, but a couple other projects. One was inspired by the diary of Ruka Laskier, who is a contemporary of Anne Frank, who grew up in Będzin, Poland, and it is up on stage now. It was just at Cincinnati Playhouse, and in fact, what I found was people do want to talk about it. People do want to come to the theater. People do want to engage. Look at people who've come to our theater today to talk about what happens when a school gets shut off. I think the difficult things people do want to talk about. They're ready to talk about it. How do we talk about it? What are the forums that we open up so we can talk about it and also feel about it? Feel about uncomfortable things. I do feel like we have a responsibility to protect each other from harm, but not discomfort. In fact, we have to expose our discomfort and why it's there and talk about it constantly. And how do you spend your time now? I'm going to film festivals, doing this sort of work, but also other things. What are the ways in which you just invest in your family, enjoy in the things that you can control, and then also venture out into discomfort to do the work that you feel called to do?
Well, I'm in touch with my students. I don't know if a lot of times people have questions about the kids that were in the class, but I love my students from all the years I started teaching there in 2001, and so I still am in touch. There's some that live in DC, so I see them. We go out for brunch, not just particularly in that class, but the day of the shooting, that afternoon, one of the students started a group text, and they called it room 1214, and I was honored that they put me in it, because kids don't put their teacher in their text. But the point, I think, originally of the text was to inform each other where, this is awful, but where things were happening. Well, there's a celebration of life for Helen in Coral Springs, and then there's a vigil for Aaron Feist, and so we were all informing each other, and literally, Annabelle was right, I had no car, and everything you left in the classroom, and they didn't let us go back in. I still have not seen the classroom, and then it was destroyed. But so we were informing each other. I did run out with my phone. So we informed each other where, and now to this day, it's 6.5 years later, I just got a text the other day from one of my students who tried very hard. He was not the best student, and he tried very hard and kept at it, and he passed a couple days ago. He's a firefighter. I know it's so bad, and it's interesting. And we talk all the time. I've written them letters of recommendation. They call me when they just need something. One girl was at a concert and there was shots going off, and she didn't call her mom. She called me. There was, because we know how we felt and what we went through. There was a young man in the class who, after Uvalde, had a plan to kill himself. He was going to go in the car, and he was going to start it in the garage, and believe me, it was a monumental task to get him help. I tried the suicide hotline. I was all over the place until I could finally get him the help that he needed. But these kids are reaching out, and so my life work is to be there for them until the day I drop dead, and I tell them that. I mean, I'll be there for you. I'm far from an anomaly. I'm like I told Annabelle too. I'm one teacher, but I know, and I don't even know millions of teachers that will do the same thing. They're unbelievable, the total unsung heroes. It's not a platform for teachers, but really what they do above and beyond every day. Okay, you have shitty teachers, but really most are unbelievable. So I'm unique in that respect. So yes, I've tried to be involved in every town for gun safety and Brady, and try to do things like that when I can. It's not great for my mental health, but sometimes, because I know that's important. And it's not often. I mean, we all know about school shootings, other shootings as well, but it's not often you'll meet someone who was in a classroom where people were murdered. That's unusual, I think, and I feel like if I have a unique perspective, then maybe, and people don't usually ask teachers. I know and the families have all my respect in the world, but they usually ask about the families, and the teachers really usually aren't asked about these things. So I feel like I have a little bit of a unique perspective to it. But things, I try to do advocacy work. I didn't try. I thought maybe when I just moved to Washington, D.C. literally random. I just thought it would be my husband and I thought it would be a distraction. It's a beautiful city, and there's a lot to do, and it would be better for my mental health just to be somewhere different. And we just thought we'd do it for a year or two, but we're 5 years out. But I waited for all the kids to graduate and make sure they're on their way. The other thing that really makes me proud is many of those students are in careers that are helping others. Several are therapists, one's in medical school, nurses, maybe sort of firefighter. Most of them are doing unbelievable things, and they did it because they're inspired from what happened to them. So I think that's pretty awesome. So I got my teaching license in DC, and I thought about it, and I literally had the best job in the entire world. Still, this was the best school. I had the best students, the best coworkers. I couldn't repeat that. So I'm like an office manager in some little private school because I need money. But I need to work. But I'm not teaching. But I'm with kids all day. So it's sort of the best of both worlds. I work full time at a school, and I see amazing kids. I love them so much, but I'm not responsible really for their safety, and so that was a big thing.
Well, you're clearly an amazing teacher.
I have a lot to say.
I'm ready. But I think maybe some of the other students, would you take a couple of questions?
Of course.
Okay.
I think I said so much everybody knows.
All right, let's start right here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with us. I'm also an educator, and the question that I have for you is, what advice do you have to teachers and educators, especially that are dealing with students that are in so much fear and anxiety about the state of the world? It's clear you had a huge impact both before and after this tragedy. How do you support your kids?
Thank you for teaching. It's such a hard profession. Oh my gosh, it's so hard. Nobody really realizes all the things you have to put together. The anxieties, we didn't have it before because we kept thinking we were the safest school ever. It sucks for them, right? We all were like, sucks for them, but not us. So I don't recall kids having a fear of being shot at school. But now, yes, and after the shooting, it was all the stuff like that. It was the drills. If they know you're there for them, they know you're there for them. You'll listen. We listened all the time, and then they started things at my school, like a wellness center and all of that. But really, honestly, some of them that didn't want to go to the wellness center, they want to go to you because you know them. You're the one that's there for them. And so I just listened most of the time. We just listened to them. I'm sure they love you. So yeah, no, they do because they see you a lot, and you're like their role model, and you're a human being. Sometimes you make mistakes, but they don't know. They're just awesome. I do miss teenagers. I know people think that's weird, but I love them. I love teens.
Yes, sir.
Lily was the teacher, correct?
Right.
Did you speak to her at all? Your personality, you seem very much similar.
That's interesting, and maybe it's the casting, but no, we didn't, no, I think after it was done and she was casted, and I think she was, then we had one email exchange, we did not, that's why I'm very surprised, not that I'm surprised she did a good job, I'm not that, not that, I'm surprised that I didn't expect to love this show. I was nervous before I got here, it was really, she did an excellent job. You're absolutely right. So I didn't know anything. I mean, I read about her, but I did not know her.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm, first of all, this is amazing. Not only that you're here, and then to be able to see this and share yourself with us, and also through the play and through Michelle's work too, and Sarah's as well. I know them, so. But I want to ask you, I think a hard question, because the New York Times today had an article about the rise of neo-Nazis. And not only is it just rising because the numbers of people, but now publicly and blatantly marching in cities around the country. And there's just, for me, also as a Holocaust educator, I studied with Ivy Schamis. He was my mentor.
I wish.
And to say never forget, I think there's a real issue now about that. Are we really transmitting the lessons from this and the strong irony of this happening in your classroom with someone who's following white supremacist ideology? And now there's the rise of all of it, and so many people are also caught up in conspiracy theories, and which I think are at the root of so much of this. And I don't know, what are your thoughts on this continued rise?
Interestingly enough, when they talked about the diversity of the kids in the class, and they were from all backgrounds, and they heard of the Holocaust but didn't really know anything about it or whatever, and the first thing, and I taught chronologically, but the first thing we talked about was anti-Semitism being the oldest hatred in the world. And they were shocked, the kids were shocked, they didn't know a lot of things. In fact, some of them did a lot of it wasn't supposed to be for that, but they did a lot of self-explorations. And this one kid's saying, my dad's a bigot, and I'm no kidding, I'm not kidding. And they discovered these things about themselves or their family members that they didn't think about before. So yeah, and the politics, as you know, of what's happening now in the world is getting worse. I mean, it was bad, but it's getting worse. I'm not a doomsdayer, but I don't see it getting better. And what's happening in Europe and I guess all over the world, it's horrible. It's horrible. I like to look at the good things, and sometimes I try to do that just to tell myself, okay, I can't be all doom and gloom, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And these Holocaust survivors, and I also hate to be the one to say they're not going to be with us anymore, but they're not. The best part, okay, now Florida sucks, but the best part of being there is that we had a plethora of Holocaust survivors, and they are awesome. They are awesome. I love them so much. They came and spoke to my students. We had a Kristallnacht celebration with kids doing interpretive dance. We had luncheons for them. I love them so much. My kids love them. They opened their eyes, and they came to the class. Sometimes we had them in the auditorium, depending on what they allowed, and they gave us so much hope. They gave us so much hope. They were great, you can't compare tragedies. I know you can't compare the things like that. Everyone's thing is important to them. But even before the shooting, like if the kids were like, oh, I'm so hot in here or something, I would say, look at Leon, who used to come visit our class. Look, he wouldn't care if it was hot. Like what they went through and what they experienced, we were in awe, and they would sometimes be very candid. And these were older students, and to take the class, you had to be mature. So it was unbelievable. So these survivors, and many have died since even then. But there were like people I knew, I guess, through networking, and we'd find different survivors. There was a Holocaust survivor band, literally a drummer that survived that came to our school. And it was the best class ever. It was amazing. That's why I don't want to teach anything else. But they inspired us. It was the Holocaust survivors. So now they're not even there to tell their story. And that's really scary. That's really scary. And how many can they touch? So because of the Shoah Foundation, and now Dimensions and Testimony and all of these things that are allowing it to live on, but they're physically not there, and that makes it much harder. Much harder.
I was thinking about that in terms of storytelling, because we think about tragedies and the loss in that, and the victims too. And sometimes we get to study voices of victims, and Michelle gave voice to some victims here too, and the stories of the survivors, and the work of the survivors, and the missions of the survivors, however they do that, and feel called to do that, but they're important, and they inspire us to.
At first I felt guilty calling us survivors. I know that because
It's a thing.
I don't know, I kept thinking they're the real survivors. That's weird.
Yeah, but it's a thing, right? Like all of the psychological, guilt, and what do you do when you're a survivor and someone else didn't? And I think Michelle took that up really well in play, right? And then that's part of the experience as well. Are there a couple other questions? Yes, there are. So 1, 2, 3. Great.
I'm so glad to hear that you loved it.
My teaching?
No,
the play.
The
show.
play, which is, it was very brave of you to see it for the first time along with, all these strangers.
We're friends now.
What are your next efforts going forward? What are you like? I know you moved down to DC and you're doing advocacy periodically.
A little bit. I'm working full time. I have a German Shepherd now that I spend all my time. I don't know. This was
Please keep us
thank
posted.
you. You're so nice.
However, we need to thank you because, as you alluded to yourself, this isn't free. This comes with a tremendous personal cost to you. And we appreciate you doing the interview. We appreciate you working with the playwright. I don't know any of these people.
Thank you. That's very nice of
But
you.
we're educators as well. I'm
yes.
a counselor, she's a teacher.
Wonderful.
And
That's awesome.
we know that there's tremendous personal cost to this.
Yeah,
And we
thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ivy, I know that you always wanted to get back into the classroom, I know that, and didn't before it was destroyed. This imagining of the whole premise of getting back in, was it cathartic? How did that feel?
Seeing this?
I mean, the idea that you could get back in, because I know you didn't.
Yes, this was weird. When I first came in, this was weird because it sort of looks like, it does look like my classroom. I did have our the kids painted barbed wire because they wanted it not to be strange or creepy, but it like a museum. I didn't only teach history of the Holocaust though. I taught different subjects in geography and AP Human Geography. I taught international relations, different subjects. But that one was very, the kids really, really liked taking that class. So, and it felt weird. And this same way that they have the door with and it was burgundy, it was weird. It's, I don't know, cathartic maybe, no, I don't know, because I did wanna go back into my classroom before they destroyed it, but I did not get the opportunity, so, yeah, I don't know, it's interesting, and there were chocolates on my desk from Valentine's Day, it's very much replicated my room, yes, really did.
Did you know about this?
Same floor, everything. They really did a great job. The poster was a big yellow Leon Chagrin. He's still alive, he's like 98. I call him all the time, but he gave me a big yellow poster with Never Forget, and so we had posters about Holocaust things on there as well. But it wasn't, and maps, many maps that you did, but it wasn't just a classroom of history of the Holocaust, but the kids, they helped create it that way. They helped make it like a museum type sort of.
What about the $34?
I never had $34 in my life. I did not have that.
All right, last question. Thank you.
So thank you so much for sharing the worst day of your life with those of us. My question is how did you and Michelle become in contact, and what made you feel that you could share the worst day of your life with someone who was an artist?
That's a really good question, because right, a lot of people don't trust anyone. I trust Kim when she made her film as well. I guess it's a feeling that you get, but how I originally got in contact with Michelle, or she got in contact with me, was I tried to, and even it wasn't easy, like you said, I tried to be involved in some of these gun violence prevention organizations, and one was Every Town for Gun Safety. And I can't remember why Michelle was on that call, it was a Zoom, because it was COVID. So we did things on Zoom, and sometimes they ask if you'll share your story, and it depends. Sometimes I can't, but if they ask, and sometimes I do. And I did, I shared the story on Zoom, and then Michelle reached out to me after and said, I'm really inspired by that, can we talk about it? And so that's how, but I didn't, but other people have asked to talk about it, never did this with it, so I wasn't, not that I didn't trust her, but I didn't know that she was gonna do something like this, or how it was gonna come to fruition like this. But I was willing to share because it was an important story to tell, and you never know, like there have been some things made about it, and I feel like, and also if I tell it, then it comes out the right way, maybe? Yeah, okay, so.
Well, thank you.